Today we discussed a very important topic. We sat down with Zach Nguyen, who grew up on the streets, got into crime, in and out of juvie, and then went to federal prison and has really cleaned up his life and doing good work in the city with nonprofits. And he's raising money for at-risk youth here in Wichita. This is a very important discussion, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do the same. All right, we're live. Zach,
All right.
I really appreciate you being here, man.
No problem. Excited to be here.
Thanks. You know, it takes real courage to speak up and talk about a story like this. I know your journey hasn't been easy, but what you're doing now is really making a difference. Raising money for at-risk and troubled youth. I got a lot of respect for people, especially, who kind of start out getting into trouble on a difficult path and then end up doing things that kind of turn it around. You found out you're not going down that road anymore and you're going to make a change.
Correct.
So let's start from the beginning. What do you remember most about your early childhood in Wichita?
Most of my childhood growing up here was pretty rough, but it was rough. But to me, it didn't seem rough because my environment just seemed normal. So my family is we're first generation Asian American born here. My mom, she came to the U.S. as a refugee. Probably about 21 years old is when she had me. I was pretty much born and raised here. I've been here since I was like 2. We lived in a lot of ghetto apartments all over town. And, growing up in a community where, life was just normal in the ghetto. So for me, that's where it started. I didn't know the better things in life, and then until you see it, then you want it. But until then, I went to school. I went to the school that we're living downtown Wichita. So, the area is obviously kind of not the greatest. But I lived over there by Central and Hydraulic. So I would walk to school every day. I didn't know English until I went to school because, my mom didn't speak English. So I only spoke Vietnamese at home until I went to school. And so I had a hard time also in school because I didn't know English. So I was kind of behind. And, I had ESL, which is English as a second language. I would walk to school every day when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, and school would be like a mile away. Again, it was normal to me. I'm walking to school, a bunch of other badass kids walking to school. I would see, homeless people all around me. I would see, drug addicts. At the time, for me, it was, again, the environment, my surroundings was just all normal to me. I didn't know anything different, It was just a normal life. I went to school wearing 2, 3 outfits, for the week. I had the same pair of shoes the whole entire year. I would outgrow my shoes. I would have holes in my shoes, but I look around me, same thing with the other kids, The school I went to is majority black kids, some white and Mexicans, but not too many Asians at that time. So that was kind of like my early stage in my life.
You have any siblings?
Not at the time, not until I was 8 years old.
Gotcha. So your influence is just the people around you.
Yeah. At the time, I was a bad kid, but it's because I just more so on the attention side. I didn't have toys. And in our area, I would play outside. From the time I got out of school, I would just be outside playing. And obviously, if my mom's not watching me, I'm just getting into trouble and doing a bunch of kid stuff. And I didn't have much attention focus at school. I didn't have my dad around, so it was just my mom. My grandpa tried to help raise me, but he was more so just gave my mom a lot of stuff because obviously my dad's not around, so she was already always being judged for not having the right person in her life. So took it out on her, and she takes it out on me, and that's how it all started. Mostly just growing up looking for attention, looking for love. It was really hard for my mother to express that to me as a kid. Obviously, with her, being a young mother at a young age. So it was difficult for her too, but obviously as a kid, I didn't know any better. I didn't see what she was going through. Again, I was just being a kid and just wanting to play and wanting to fit in, wanting to be cool, and that's what got me into a lot of trouble in my early days.
Yeah, looking for a sense of community.
Yep, exactly.
I got you. So, by age 13, you helped start the largest Vietnamese gang in the Midwest.
Yeah, so I ended up moving to the east side. When I was in the fifth grade, we were living in these apartments, and being the kid that I was playing with fireworks and was lighting them on fire and throwing them out the window on the third story. So the building kind of caught on fire, and we got kicked out. But I mean, they didn't know I did it, but obviously they assumed I did it. So I was like, all right. So I mean, that changed my life right there, because I would have ended up going to South High School or Truesdale Middle School, and obviously your environment again, this has to do a lot with for in my eyes, where your life is going to turn out to be, the type of crowd. And for me, I ended up going to the east side, and that's when I went to Curtis, and that's when I started recognizing that I had people that are like my own kind. Like I met other Asian people, first generation, going through the same thing that I'm going through, growing up in poverty and having strict parents, because obviously all they care about is your kids go to school, become a doctor. That's it. And for me, it was nowhere near that. But so I moved to the east side, and that's when I would say a big part of my life changed. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So when I moved to the east side, my mom worked second shift, which led me to, at that time, 10, 11, 12 years old, I would have to go to daycare. I had nobody in my family wanted to watch me. So I had to go to daycare, babysitters, and it wasn't just one, it was just one here, one there. It was just constantly, moving around. And so, my life was, as a kid, I really hated it, I wanted to be home after school. I wanted a home. I didn't have a home. My home was in the hands of, babysitters and daycare, where I'm the only older child there, and pretty much they end up putting me in charge of always taking care of 5 or 6 other little kids. Obviously, you're like the big kid where they know you can take care of yourself. Okay, here, you watch these little kids. And obviously, my mom's not going to care. She goes to work second shift. She needs someone to watch me. The state pays for the child care, and the people that are watching me, they're just collecting checks. So in a way, it's like, I never really had any kind of sense of love or attention. Again, back to that. So that's what I feel like got me heading towards the wrong direction.
So the gang you were involved in grew to over 40 members.
Mm-hmm. So it started when my 8th grade year, I ran away from home. And it was me and a couple of my other friends. We decided to start a gang. The gang was my nationality, which was Vietnamese. We called it Viet Boys. We started out with 5, and next thing you know, within a year, we had like 15, and then next thing you know, the whole city. And then not only the whole city, but then we started, meeting other Vietnamese Asian Americans in the U.S. from like different cities all around the U.S. So then it became like more of a pride thing, like, oh man, we got friends here, we got friends there. It was like, okay, well, let's see how big we can get this thing. And it was treated like a real gang. But it wasn't more so of a gang as in we were going out trying to start a war with any other gangs. It was just more so of us having a brotherly bond, just being a group that we have each other. And so, at that point, my dedication and loyalty was to my friends, because my friends were the first ones in my life to show me love and attention, that they showed me that they're there for me. And obviously at that time, when I'm 13, I have older friends that are like 15, 16, friends that are starting to drive around. My friends came over to my house, was like, if you're not wanted at home, you can stay with me. So that's where my life changed. From that moment on, it was just me wanting to, just be around my friends all the time. And obviously, when you're living on the streets at 13 years old, you get into a lot of trouble. You're trying to survive, you're trying to find places to live, you're trying to make money, but, you're still a 13-year-old kid, but you don't know how to go on about it. But luckily for me, half the time I would, get caught. And so I was eventually sent to the boys' home. And I was at 13 again. Mostly everything I've learned was in my early teenage years. Um, I was caught for shoplifting a couple times. I ended up. They gave me chances where you first go to the children's home. Obviously, I ran away first night. Ran away, got caught. And this time now, I'm taken to court, and my mom, she didn't know what to do with me. She was like, okay, just I can't, he take him. So they put me in the custody of the state to where I went to the boys' home. The first boys' home I went to was in Goddard. It was called the Boys Ranch. Well, actually, that was the second one. Sorry, I went to this first one. Was called King's Achievement Center. I'm not sure if it's there anymore. It was like a 4 to 6 month program. I did it, and I got out and got in trouble and went right back in. But my experience all started, with that first boys' home. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but I did enjoy it because it was different. I didn't enjoy being locked away, but I enjoyed like just being around a group of guys, a group of friends in the same situation as me, where it was normal. All these kids are all from broken homes. They're in trouble not because they want to get in trouble, but they're just looking for, friendship,
You don't know
love.
any different.
No, they don't know any different. They're all just, alike, and we form a bond, And the good thing about me being away during this time is I always had a friend or two with me. Again, because when when the gang was started, there's so many other Vietnamese kids that was in the same boat as me. We just ran the streets, and eventually we all got in trouble with the law, and they would arrest and take us away. So I always had a friend or two with me, and so again that made it even more. The bond grew even stronger because of that. Like I got my friend with me. We're going through the same thing. It's like that's all I have is my friend. And that's all that mattered to me. As long as I had one of my friends with me, I'm okay. Like I felt like I had someone to back me up at all times. So and yeah, that was the first time I got in trouble.
It's important for people to know that we had a stable upbringing. It's important for people to know on the outside of that this is a lot of people, like in your case, a lot of people's first sense of community.
Yeah, yeah.
It
I'm blessed to be where I'm at today because I can see both sides of it. Like, it's a reminder of how lucky and fortunate I am to be living on the outside of the city now. My kids going to good school, they will never know that life that I grew up in. But the thing is, I know that that life exists. And it existed, just because you're born into a community or environment that it's tough to get out of for a lot of people. You're very lucky to get out of that situation, and obviously, as I keep talking about my story, I'll explain more how I got lucky. But I mean, I've been lucky plenty of times. But yeah, and from the time I was 13 to 18, I was in 4 or 5 different boys' home. My second boys' home I went to, again, I ran into a friend that was at the boys' home. He had like a month left, but I just got there and my first thought was, I don't want to be here. I'm gonna run away from this boys' home, and he was such a good friend where like he didn't want me to be on my own. He ended up running away with me. He had 1 month till he went to go home.
Wow.
Obviously, if you get in trouble, you're sacrificing your freedom to go back and start all over again at a new boys' home. And this time, it's not going to be a simple boys' home. It's going to be more stricter. So we both ran. I had a friend come pick us up. We're both on the run. Summertime. I get the thrill of just, getting to see all my friends, and being around my friends, and just, when I say my friends, obviously the gang. But it didn't last long. Eventually get caught, and this time they sent me to boot camp. It was like, this time there was barbed wire fences. There's no escaping this time. It was a lot stricter, but I got sent to boot camp.
Was this in Goddard?
No, this was in Topeka.
Okay.
This is Topeka. So again, 6 months. I do the 6 months. I come home. I'm like 15 years old. At that time, back home, and throughout this whole time, when I go to a boys' home and I come out, I'm already in the system, the juvenile system, which is, you're on probation until you complete your probation, which is 6 months to a year supervision, and their terms are not strict, but for me, it was strict because you have to go to school and do good in school. You have to be home by 6-7 o'clock curfew. Just simple things that you need to abide by. But for me, it was difficult because as soon as I get home, I'm back into the situation where I don't have a home where I feel loved. I want to be around my friends. I want to go hang out with my friends. And that's what got me into a lot of trouble, was just wanting to be around people that felt like that mattered to me.
Do you recall what is it like to be on the run?
That's the thing. It's exciting because when I say on the run, it's more so just being kind of like free, carefree. Again, growing up, I didn't have things to keep me occupied at home. I didn't have toys. I didn't have, my toys was, mom would buy me a dollar puzzle and put that puzzle together and take it apart and put it together again. My grandpa, he used to buy me 10,000 piece puzzles, and I'm doing them at 5, 6, 7 years old, and that's the thing. I enjoy being outside playing. I wanted to play games. I was always involved in wanting to play sports. I just wanted to play, but that's the only time I was able to play. So, when you're a teenager, I enjoy just being out, just being around people, and just, I just wanted to be out and about. I just wanted to be around people that make me feel, they just made me feel alive. I was always like, I just hated home. As a kid, I wanted my dad a lot because it's like, I never see my dad. But your dad tells you the things that you want to hear because obviously he's not in your life. He'll tell you, oh, I love you, and, I want to be with you. And that's what mattered to me. It's like, no one tells me that. But obviously my dad tells me that because he sees me once every 5 years. So he's going to tell me the things I want to hear, so I believe it and want that. Not knowing that that's not what I need or want, What I needed was obviously to be taken care of. But I'm not appreciating my mom because all I did was crave love and attention outside of my own home because my mom wasn't able to show me affection and love. And growing up here in America, that's what you see a lot. You see that when I say that, it's like, where do I learn all this from? Obviously, when I watch movies, when I watch movies, family movies, they all have happy endings, right? And they're all like Disney movies, like they all have, like I wish I was that kid, or it's like I wish I had that problem, it's always happy ending. And for me, it was just like, I never had hugs, I never had kisses, I never had I love you, son, or good job. It was just always, I wish I didn't have you. You ruined my life. It just, but those things were normal to me to where like, it didn't bother me at the time. Not until I was older did I realize how much it meant to me, how much it ruined my life as a kid, But, again, a lot of it is a blessing, because it's taught me a lot. But at the moment, I just didn't know.
It's so crazy at that young age, being so impressionable that, when you're 13, you're just longing for a sense of community.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it at home, you're going to go look for it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's probably the case with a lot of kids.
Yeah, and it's influence. A lot of it, again, I go back to, it's very important who you're surrounded by, your environment and your surroundings and who your group of friends are. I went out and found my own group of friends. Obviously it wasn't the greatest influence, but, it's just one of those things where still is, how important is it to love someone, or just show love, and
Right.
that's what I gravitated towards, So that was, and that, I mean, they're good friends. It's just we just made bad choices. It doesn't mean that a lot of my friends weren't good people. We just made bad choices because we didn't know any better. We were so. I'm just speaking for me and a lot of my friends. Like it was so important for us to show love and loyalty to one another. So meaning like, we're always looking to show that I had your back. Like if you had problems, I got your back. And sometimes that leads to like, getting into fights with people because it shows that you have their back. Like how else are you going to show someone that you love them? Like our way of talking is action, And obviously when you go from 14 to 15, the fights gets more serious and, eventually, drugs and money and gang banging. That's when it took a life on its own. And again, it's like, it's one of those things where you have a lot of pride in being a good friend to one another to where you're, making bad decisions, just trying to prove something. It's all about trying to prove that you have your friend's back that gets you into trouble. It's never my own drama. It's never my own problem. It's me, being there for my friends, as if they would have been there for me.
The brotherhood aspect of it.
The brotherhood of it, yep.
No, that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's all I had every time I went to a boys' home or locked away. I always had a friend with me, and it carried a lot of weight.
Yeah, it wasn't like you were choosing a bad influence over a good influence.
Yeah.
You didn't have a good influence,
Exactly.
so that was the only path you were going to gravitate to. And how many of you are out there?
Mm-hmm.
Tons.
Yeah.
Where you don't have a good option.
Yeah.
So you pick your only
This is all
option.
I know.
Right.
And so, I and I was always trapped in the system of, I was an easy target for, once you're in the custody of the state, you're always under supervised, so it's always easy to really get in trouble. It doesn't take much. Miss curfew once or twice, you're going right back in. But, I continue to. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Got to stay healthy.
Yeah. So I continued to get in trouble, and then I caught my first felony charges at 16 years old. It was for attempted burglary and grand theft auto. So, again, I'm just on the streets trying to do dumb things to make money. I don't know any better. We ended up getting caught, and my friends had like 3 stolen cars in the back, and I get charged for it. But for me, again, it's one of those things where like I'm not gonna sit there and rat out my friend. It's my car. I got arrested. I'm not, and it sent me away for 1 year, and so no more boys' home. I went to 3 different boys' home and boot camp before I went to my first juvenile prison at 16, going on 17. So that lets you know from 13 to 16, I spent more time locked away in a boys' home than I did out on the streets.
What is the juvenile system like?
No, again, it's so different for me because I spent more time in there than out there, to where it was a brotherhood outside of my brotherhood. Does that make sense? Like I have a gang inside and I have a gang outside. The juvenile system, again, is a system where all the kids that are in trouble with the law are constantly being in and out. And so from 13 to 16, I have 3 years of history of going in and out. I know all these kids going in and out. It's like I get arrested. Oh, it sucks. But man, I get to run into this guy, run into that guy. How you been? It's like, and it's sad because like I feel like I'm a veteran in there, like
It almost felt normal.
it
in
is.
a way.
It felt normal to me. Like I was comfortable with being in there. I mean, for one, you get free food. People don't think about that. Like I'm over here on the streets, growing up eating noodles every day and peanut butter jelly sandwiches. At least the state feeds me hamburgers, and
Right.
It's sad, but I mean, even the food is not the greatest. But it's like you get fed. Again, you have games, toys to play with. I love playing games. I love playing cards. I love strategy games. I love being able to anything that makes me think. It was just something different. So, I play basketball, football. They give you activities to do in there while you're, locked away. They don't just put you in a room with nothing. So, you know, it was normal for me in there to where I had an exit date to look forward to. So that's all that mattered to me. And while I was in there, I'm forced to go to school. So that gave me time to, you know, not think about doing anything bad because I'm in there. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to go to school. And then at school, I'm going to go and enjoy my activities, you know, sports. And it's kind of crazy because outside in this real world, it's the same thing. Like I have kids now where they go to school and what's after school? It's all sports. You know, this one kid got soccer, this kid got football, now I got gymnastics. Like you give them activities, you know. And for me, I find joy in that as a kid when I was in these boys' home, you know, even in juvenile prison, like they keep you busy, you know. You had and when you wasn't involved in sports and you're still hanging out with each other, or like, you know, your brothers or sisters, like you're always around a group of like 15 other boys, you know. But it gave me a chance to also really, you know, obviously throughout the years, it gave me the ability to really know, like, you know, boys and growing up into men, like known men and how, you know, people interact with one another, and that saved me a lot too moving forward too. I'll get into that a little later, but yeah, I did that. I got out of prison and juvenile prison. I was 17, and then again, my life, my actions caught back up to me before I turned 18.
When you're in juvenile prison, are you staying in relative contact with the group outside?
Nope, I have no communication.
So you have no idea.
They allow you to, well, especially in juvenile prison, there's no, when you're at a boys' home, before you go home, they allow you to have a couple passes, like where you can go home for a weekend and you have to come back. Like they slowly let you back into society. So, you know, like when I'm away for 4 or 5 months, I get to go home for 1 or 2 weekends before they release me to just to make sure that, you know, everything's going smoothly. But normally, you don't really have much communication with using the telephone because they're not going to allow you to jump on the phone, call whoever you want to call. You have to have a contact list where you can only call your mom or your siblings. You can't just add friends to your list. They're not going to let you call your friend. It's supervised. Everything's supervised. So, you know, obviously when I'm in there, I'm thinking about is like, hey, I can't wait to see this person. I can't wait to see that person. But, you know, you long for it. You can't wait for that moment, you know. But until then, you don't think about it and you just, you know, you just bond and hang out with the kids that are in there with you.
Gotcha. So you were released, and then 2 months later, a gang fight broke out.
A gang fight.
And you were stabbed multiple times.
Yes.
And you had to be airlifted. Mm-hmm. What do you remember most vividly about that night?
It was happening early hours, like 5 a.m. It was a different gang from a different city. Obviously, it was more so of different cities. And in the past, you know, it's just one of those things where you just gangbang with a different rival. And we done some harm to them. They done retaliated back and forth. And eventually, it was me and 3 of my other friends, and we ran into a group of like 15. And we got jumped, and I just remember I was just fighting. And, you know, I never knew I got stabbed. I just thought I got kicked in the ribs really hard or something because I couldn't breathe. They ended up, you know, scattering, and the cops came, and I was just laying there. I was drenched in blood, but again, I didn't know why or how. But so yeah, I got stabbed, and I remember when I was being airlifted to the hospital. I kind of remember going in and out of conscious. Like I knew I was gonna die. When I was in a helicopter, my life, you know, it kind of like slowly was fading. When I say fading, I can see my thoughts and memories like slowly just, you know. The crazy thing was I had memories of me as a child that I never knew existed until I was dying. Like flashbacks of my life.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember like just moments. And And it was like a slow story of my life to where how I got to where I was at that moment. So that's when I knew I was gonna die because I felt like my life is just flying right in front of my eyes. And I remember but the thing was I was dying for air. I was fighting to breathe. I couldn't breathe. Every time I took a breath, I was just hurting and hurting. But I kept, I'm dying for air. But you know, and then slowly, like it was getting harder to breathe. So, I just didn't give up. I just kept breathing. And then when I got to the hospital, I remember the nurse was gonna tell me, we're just gonna put you to sleep and everything's gonna be okay when you wake up. But in my eyes, I was like, you're just lying to me. You just want me to go away peacefully. At that moment, I just, I couldn't take it anymore to where like I don't remember fighting to breathe anymore. It just, my life kind of just completely went black. But when my life, when my memories faded, everything went black, and then in an instant, I saw like this light, like a light at the end of the tunnel, like really far, but it's getting, I'm going through this tunnel, and it's going really fast. Like and in my heart, in my mind, I was like, oh wow, I'm not going to heaven. That's my first thought, because before I actually everything went black, when I was still in the helicopter ride, when I said I knew I was going to die, I actually started praying. I started praying to God. And, throughout my whole life, I'm not religious or anything, but I always believed in God. Like I would, I would turn to him for a lot of moments where I'm just like, more like crying to him all the time. I wasn't really thanking him, but I was just crying to him, like, why am I always in this situation? Why am I always suffering? Like, why does this happen to me? Like, but at that moment, I wasn't crying to him, but I was more so asking him to forgive me. And I was talking to him, and the crazy thing was at that moment, all I ever wanted at that moment was to say goodbye to my mom. But I never thought about my mom up until that moment. But at that moment, I don't know why, in my heart, like I just wanted to say goodbye to my mom. I wanted to say sorry to my mom, but and I was sad because I didn't get the chance to say bye. So that was my last thought about my mom, and then that's when I started praying to God, like to ask Him to forgive me for, my sins, and that's when again I got to the hospital, and everything went black, and then that at that moment I thought I was going to heaven because, oh, God, he heard me, he heard me, so I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to heaven. So I'm being sucked through this tunnel, and I'm getting closer and closer to this shadow I see at the end, and I'm in my head, I'm like, that's Jesus right there. He's, I'm going to heaven, and then right before I get there, everything just goes black again. I'm like, oh shit, what does this mean? And then if you right now if you look at the light and close your eyes, you see the redness. It's because your eyes are closed, but you still see bright. So it's kind of red, but it's a scary red. So in my mind, I was like, oh shit, I didn't make it. I think I'm about to go to hell. But yeah, so it was scary. It was a good moment. Then it went scary, and then I woke up in the hospital, and that's when I found out. The moment I woke up in the hospital, I found out that I had a punctured lung. I had a hole in my lung, so that's why I couldn't breathe. So every time I was taking a breath, my lungs are filling up with blood. So I'm drowning in my own blood. But luckily they were able to get me there in time and put tubes in my heart, suck out all the blood. At that time, I think they had to revive me when I obviously wasn't breathing. But I was blessed to have made it through, and then I didn't have much time to really think about what happened at that moment because as soon as I woke up, everything came back to me again, like the reality. Like I didn't have time to think about what just happened over the last couple hours because my state of mind was like I woke up in the hospital and the first thing is 2 detectives come in ready to question me. So I didn't even have time to process that moment that happened to me. So the detectives, first thing they want to know is what happened, and they're showing me pictures of the guys that got arrested, and that's when I also found out that my friend, he got stabbed in the heart and he died immediately. So, it's one of those things where it's like, it could have been me, and
Right.
I mean, my lung was right by my heart too, so, at that moment, I was just like, you know, I didn't know how to take it all in. Again, it's one of those moments where I'm thankful, but it's like back to crying again. It's like, why am I, in this situation? So I had surgery. I have 40 staples right here. It's all from being stabbed. They had to, get to my lung to repair it, from my understanding. So this was 2 weeks before I turned 18. So technically, I'm still a juvenile. So
It's so crazy you can remember like that, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. Can
Yeah.
you see it right now like you saw it then?
yeah, I don't think I can forget the moment. Yeah, no, I can always visualize that moment. It was a moment of like again, I was at peace. Like because I felt nothing. I didn't have any feelings. Again, the flashbacks is something that I would never believe. I would only hear about until I experience it myself. Like what gets me is like having memories that I didn't know exist. So that's what was a big thing. Like I had memories of me like when I was like 3 years old. Like you forget when you remember stuff when you're 7, 8, but when you're 18, you're not gonna remember stuff when you're like a baby or 2 years old. Like it's you don't. But I saw those moments in my life. Like in a old apartment, jumping up and down on a bouncer.
Wow.
That is
That's
remarkable.
so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's like my life played out in front of me. So yeah, that happened. But again, I didn't get to process it at the time. But then when I was able to process it, like it all came back to me like instantly. Like that did happen. Like and it was remarkable.
Totally.
Yeah.
That is
Unbelievable.
remarkable. When I was reading your article, there was a quote there that I really liked. Mm-hmm. During that moment, you said, "I remember before closing my eyes and taking my last breath, I started to pray to God, asking forgiveness, and for a moment was at peace."
Yeah, that's what I felt.
So powerful, man.
And the thing was, I didn't think I deserved it at all. Obviously the life that I was living, I didn't deserve, but I still had to, like, again, I prayed because at the end of the day, like, God, I know He knows my heart, and that's what was important to me. Like, I made bad decisions, bad choices, but it's my heart still. It's like I'm inside, I'm a good person, I just didn't, up to that point, just didn't live the right way. And again, that's, early on in my teenage years. I had a lot of growing to do, and I still had to continue to make a lot of bad choices before, understanding the reality of where I'm at in my life and who I want to be and where I want to be when I grow up. But it was still a learning moment, because at that moment I still didn't get it all. I had to come back to I was back in Wichita, and again I violated my probation for being involved in gangs, fights, and so I was taken back into juvenile detention. On my 18th birthday, they took me to county jail at midnight, exactly at midnight, right before I turned
Wow.
18. Yeah, it wasn't one day later, 2 days later. At 11 o'clock at nighttime, they took me. When I was 17, I had 1 hour to turn 18. They took me to county jail and booked me in the county jail, because when you're 18, you can't be in juvenile system anymore. But I had to go back to juvenile prison. You can go to juvenile prison up till you're like 21. So I went to county jail, and it takes time to process before they get you shipped out back to juvenile prison. So juvenile prison was in Topeka. Also, it was called Youth Correctional Facility. So I went back there, and again, I'm back to familiar faces that I've known throughout the system for the last 5 years. And it's nice to be welcomed and feel love from friends. And at that time, kind of handicapped because of all the staples in me. It was in me for a couple of weeks before they took it out. But I got there. I had to do 6 months for violating my probation. I got out, and now I'm 18 years old. I'm free for the first time. Probation was easier because the curfew is not so strict because I'm 18. There's not no 6 o'clock curfew, or I don't have to go to school because I graduated. That picture I graduated in there with my. So luckily, all the juvenile time I did, I was able to catch up in school while I was in there. I actually graduated with a 4.0 in there.
Oh,
Good
very
for
nice.
you.
Good for you, man.
Not that it mattered in life later, but I did. I was proud of that moment. I got out, and I attempted to change my life, and try to go to a community college, and I attempted to change my life around, and it started with just having someone in your life, more like a girlfriend, that kept me out of trouble. Now I'm just talking to someone, not being around as my friends as much, but eventually my life took a turn when I got introduced to drugs at that age. I mean, throughout my life I was curious and using recreationally or for fun or stuff like that. But it took on a life of its own when I got introduced to the drug ecstasy. At that time, it was 2003. I was 18, and I started selling it. And that's, again, up until then, I never had money. My whole entire life, I had no money. When I was doing bad things, stealing, breaking anything, I was, hundreds of dollars the max, like $100 a lot, $200 a lot, oh, $300, I'm rich, So, when I first got into selling drugs, it was crazy because I went from, selling 10 pills to 100 pills. Next thing you know, I was selling thousands of pills. And this is, fresh out, 18, and I went from having no money to now I have like $5,000 I made in 2 weeks. So you can imagine the difference or the feeling of having money for the first time in your life at 18 years old.
Sure.
And it's at a time where like that age where like you're all about image, fronting, like looking like you have money, like you're
Balling.
yeah, that's how I felt at 18 years old. But not just that, it was just I went from having no money to making $5,000 a week every week. By the time I was 19 years old, I made over $100,000, and we're talking about 19 years old with $100,000. Like,
Wow.
Again, when I was 14, 15, I'm over here like, trying to steal stuff and make $20, and here I am now, $100,000, like I thought I was like above everything, I was walking around.
You just sitting on that in cash?
A lot of it was cash. I was,
God
yeah,
damn, dude.
I was cash. So again, my whole entire life, I was living in apartments, and I took $30,000. I gave it to my mom. I was like, here's down payment for a house. Let's go live in a nice neighborhood, And, my grandpa, who I never really had a relationship with, he knows I'm probably doing something illegal, but he just doesn't care. He's like, you know what? You better take this money and go get a house, Like, he was actually proud of me for taking care of my mom. Because, again, my mom's always been working at a minimum wage job, And here we are now. We just moved into a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, when I was 19 years old. So I'm feeling like, I'm the man now, Like, here I am walking around town with the biggest gang, with the biggest money, walking around with a $10,000 chain on my neck. Like, you couldn't tell me anything different,
Where do you keep the cash?
Oh, it was just everywhere. I mean, I would have friends hold it. So I
wonder what $100,000 of cash looks like.
I thought I was a smart drug dealer because, I was like, if I don't do the transaction myself, and if I don't have the product, then I'll never get in trouble. because if I don't get caught with it, I'm not going to get in trouble. I thought I was like, if I have someone else do it and pay someone else do it, then, they would be reliable for it. Well, I didn't know what the federal government was at that time. I didn't know what the DEA was. I didn't know what illegal use tapping your phone was. Like, the stuff like that when I'm like 18, 19 years old, I thought for just watching TV or movies. Well, I mean, so for 3 years, that was my life. I was involved in drugs. Obviously, I started using it recreationally, and then it became an addiction as well. And the addiction part of it was more so of, living the life that I was living. Like, I would still always like reminisce on how I got to where I was at the moment. I still pray to God, but it was in a way where it wasn't right. I'm praying to God, like, thank you for this. But like, I felt like, he was giving me back the life that I deserve, for all the moments that, I was, put away, all those lonely nights, all those, and there was a time where I was just driving down the highway, just, again, praying to God and telling him thank you. And at the same time, asking him to forgive me for the life that I was living. And, eventually, I felt like I needed to stop. But before I did completely stop, I ended up getting arrested. Luckily, I did stop, but it was just too late. The DEA, they have been investigating my entire gang for 3 years. So the moment I started, they were arresting a lot of people, but it never got up to me because, again, I was never arrested with anything. It was just, people that would buy, like, 3 people below me. So they had to build a case. They built a case for 3 years. So when they ended up arresting us, it was like the whole entire gang, not just our gang, but outside, so almost like 40 people got arrested. It was a big conspiracy case. It involved a lot of people.
What year was this?
I got arrested early 2008.
So when you were 21.
21. Barely. I turned 21 and like within half a year I got arrested.
And the takedown involved 20 people and 94 federal charges.
Yeah, there was a lot of charges.
19 of them being yours.
19. And so when I got indicted, it was 19. But then the case grew so big they had to go arrest more people. So it was like cases on top of cases to where it ended up being like 40 people. And there's just, there's so many charges. And obviously, I got lucky because by the time they came to arrest me, I've already stopped for a while, like, 6 months. They just kept investigating to catch the people that continue to distribute drugs and stuff. Well, for me, I was already trying to go legit, but it was just kind of too late. My past caught up to me, and so I was arrested, and at that moment, I had the option to cooperate. They wanted to know my sources, and again, at that time, my life was surrounded by my group of friends. That's all I had, and loyalty was everything to me. My pride wouldn't let me. I mean, obviously, when you're in a situation where, like, tell, but my pride just wouldn't let me, So I could have walked out of jail by just giving up some names, but instead, I had to take a plea deal for 8 years. It's either go to trial and fight the government and lose and get 20 years, or just take this 8 years. So obviously, I got to take the 8 years. Some of our friends, that was unfortunate. They ended up getting 15 years, 20 years. I mean, 10 years, just for being at the wrong place at the wrong time, And again, it's one of those things where, like, it's it's life-changing. And it's definitely, I deserved it. I like to look at the positive in a negative situation. I mean, at that time, it was very hard for me. Again, I went from my entire life having nothing to now, like, God just gave me all this, being the richest 18-year-old kid. And then losing it all again, you know. And then at that time, I just knew like, okay, well, I got to start all over. Here I am, 21 years old. I got 8 years. And at the moment, for the first year, it was tough. Like, you know, I just threw my whole life away. You know, I didn't know how I was gonna get through this, but you know, again, I was blessed. I wouldn't say blessed, but I had experience with constantly being around, you know, trouble. You know, like I was raised in an environment to where I know how to navigate and survive in these situations. When I say that, like boys' home, graduating up to juvenile prison, now I'm going to a federal prison. Where like, you know what? Again, I had always had friends with me, so I always felt like, you know, I wasn't gonna be messed around with. You know, like we had a lot of pride in, you know, like, you know, not letting anyone punk us around or anything. So, you know, and obviously, you know, I've done so much time to where like I knew how to avoid situations like that. You know, like I knew how to be on top of it. I knew how to navigate and be in charge of, you know, situations. And so when I was 21, they sent me to a federal prison in Arkansas. It was on the border of Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee. It's like in the middle of nowhere. So when you're in the when you're in a federal prison, they can send you wherever in the United States. You're not just going to a state prison in the state. They send you wherever they want to send you. So they sent me all the way out there, and you know, that's a whole story of its own. But you know, to cut it a little shorter, like it really gave me an opportunity to grow up in there. I'm young in there, you know. I'm surrounded by, you know, people that are life 20, 30 years. You know, a lot of people aren't going home for a long time, and you know, I'm at a prison with 3,000 people. You know, and the prison, you know, you constantly have people coming and going. You know, and you know, for the first time in my life, that gave me an opportunity to be around people that are like in their 30s, 40s, 50s. Like my entire life, I didn't have, again, no influences. My influence was me and my friends. That's all we knew. So, you know, being able to spend my days and nights around people that are old enough to be my dad, but they're just like me. But how they carry themselves, I'm able to, you know, adapt and learn from people that are much older than me, you know, and like I get to hear their stories, how they got up to their situation. You learn personality. The most important thing for me in there is like I get to learn people. I got to learn people. I learn personalities. I learn character. I learn a lot of character. And before that, obviously, I always knew I was a good person. But then you don't really get to meet people outside of your own age group until I went to prison. It gave me a chance to network. You know, obviously, a lot of the guys in there are dummies, but you know, you still have people that you see that know how to stay out of the way and just do their time and go home peacefully. Whereas you have guys in there that just don't care. And at that moment in my life, I started caring. You know, like I wanted change, and I needed change. And again, I was blessed. The time that I got, it changed my life, you know, for the better. You know, like I deserved that every moment of it. But it also gave me a life in there, and it gave me, you know, I was so. The crazy thing is, telling the story leads me to going back to how it made way for me. So again, I'm familiar with the environment. I'm in a place where I'm able to play games. I'm playing cards. I love playing basketball, football. Now there's handball, volleyball, and they have a track. I'm very good. I'm very fast. I love competing, and I make good use of my time in there by staying busy.
What was it like interacting with people that are in there for really long term or life?
I mean, again, it's you learn personalities and character because you have people in different situations and how they handle the situation. Where as this person has 5 years, he's about to go home, he doesn't care. Where another person has 5 years, he really cares. You know, like he doesn't want to get in trouble. He's you know, staying out the way. You have someone that has 20 years, where they just don't care for life. You know, and you have someone for 20 years, they're making best use of their time, where it's how they navigate and they use their mind, like they still have an exit date. So for me, it was like, 8 years wasn't so bad. If I do good, I can get out in 6.5 years. So that year and a half for me, it is a big difference for me. So yeah, I'm gonna do my best to behave in there, and that comes with having experience to where I know how to navigate and stay out of the way. But luckily for me, it was always a piece of cake for me, just because I always knew how to get along with people. It was a lot easier for me because I was a minority in there, where there's only at that prison there was only like 12 Asians, and I stuck with the Asians, but then I got along with all the whites, blacks, Mexicans. It was a lot more difficult for other races because it's a totally different ball game. When it comes to like different gangs and different crews and groups, but for us it was just Asians from all over. We just stuck together because we were so small. Well, the good thing about me was I love playing cards, and I was a good hold'em player, and so the prison yards, they would have tables where you can play cards, and so me being a good card player, I instantly wanted to play. Before I was able to play, they have to go. They had to make sure that my gang with the Asian crew would back me. If I lose money and I don't pay, they have to pay it. It's one of those things where like, it's just the law in there. Mm-hmm. So obviously I didn't have money, but I told my friends, just, hey, let me play with $100, $200 and watch what I can do. So I started playing in there, and this prison that I was at, one of the biggest gangs was one of the Mexican cartels that ran the prison. When I say ran, it means that it's kind of like their prison, their spot. So they run the gambling part of the prison. So when I was playing, I would win a lot of money, enough to where like they came and was like, hey, how about you play for us? Whatever you win, we'll split. Whatever you lose, we'll pay it. So now I'm sitting here playing poker every day, 8 hours a day. In the other 8 hours, I'm going out playing sports. So my day in prison, every day is playing cards and playing sports. So for me, it was like, I got it good in here. Like, for one, no one's going to mess with me. I got the biggest cartel backing me up in here. And then obviously I made money in there by playing poker. I used that money and I became a bookie in there because I love sports. So here I am at 21 years old.
Wow.
And the prison just became
living the dream.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt in there. Like it was one of those things where I made the best of my situation.
Sure.
I'm not gonna sit there and cry. Like I have 5 years. Like it's already outside my mind. Like I put that out of there. I'm just gonna live day to day. Make the best of it. And I mean, you have your moments. But I mean, it's I'm at that moment I was just like, I don't want to say it like I'm have a lot of pride, but I was just built for that moment. Like I've had so much history, and again I just knew how to survive. It's always about survival when you're in boys home. You don't want to be picked on. You have to be like the leader of you have to be the alpha in there, and I had to put on a front, growing up, and I knew how to put on a front to where like, people didn't want to mess with me, to where like I no longer needed to, because it was in me, where like I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I'm just gonna walk the way that I walk and be who I am. Like I don't have to start shit. I don't have to, I'm a people person, like at the end of the day, I'm a people person. And then, playing poker also gave me the ability to recognize and learn people's personalities, because poker is a game of, reads. Again, I played 8 hours a day, and it's like a job. It became a job.
Gotcha.
This is completely off topic. What are some of the reads you look for when you're playing Texas Hold'em?
So imagine you go into a convention, you go into a meeting. You go into a meeting to learn how to be better at doing podcasts or something. And you're at a table with like 8 people. You're with 8 people. but you're stuck at this meeting for 10 hours, right? So you're at this meeting and you're trying to get the most out of this meeting. Well, you have a lot of time to really get a lot done, right? So when you're playing cards, a lot of people just play the cards, but you're actually playing the person instead of the cards, because if you're playing, you have time, and you have patterns. When I say patterns, like your cards are, how you play your cards is your personality. Even if I'm not playing, I get to see how you're playing this guy. And if you're there for 10 hours, but after 2 hours, I know your personality. Like, if you're at a meeting, you're going to know who's very talkative. You're going to know who's conservative. You're going to know who's, annoying. Like, you learn people's personalities after 2 hours. Like right now, you kind of know my personality after an hour of talking, right? Like, you can hear by conversation. Well, your conversation is playing cards. Like, how you play your cards against me, even when I'm not in the hand, gives me a read about you. Like, I know how you play when you have a lot of money. I know how you play when you don't have any money, when your back is against the wall. I know how you play when you're first to act. I know how you play when you're in last position. It's all about positioning, and how you play your hands after a couple of hours. Everything becomes a pattern, and if I can recognize the pattern and recognize your personality, then I know how to play my cards against you at the hours of reading somebody. And I've done this again. It comes with the territory of being around boys my entire life. I've been around men my whole life. Like, I know men, I know guys, I know how they think, I know how, like, I can tell who's the real deal. When I say the real deal, I can tell, like, who's really soft, who's really, really about that life, who's really gonna pull the trigger, who's really, just talking but won't do anything. Like, I can recognize that immediately after hanging out with you for an hour or two, and it's just you learn people's personalities when you see people hanging out, right? Like, you don't have to be interactive or involved, but I'm around boys and men my whole entire life where there's always drama. They're always trying to one up the other one, and one's trying to be more badass. It's like you see how they communicate and talk, and like who's really trying to be good, who's really don't care. Like, you just have, like, it just gave me so much growth because of that too. Again, I'm in there, I'm around people that I'm playing cards with, people that are 40, 50 years old. I gain so much knowledge just being around people that are older than me. So it gave me growth while I'm playing cards and reading people, and it also gives me, life, hard life learned lessons that I would never get if I didn't go to prison.
Sure.
So it gave me the opportunity to really know people.
Sure.
Like, again, I'm in there with 3,000 people, and it's changing every year. I'm playing cards, hundreds of people, throughout the years, new faces, new personalities, new stories, and it's just, you kind of like, now I see the whole big picture, it's totally game changer for me.
When you refer to staying out of the way in there, does that mean just staying out of fights? I'm sure there's fights going on all the time.
Again, it's like, what are they fighting over? What's important to them? Like, a lot of times when you're around men, it's back to the pride thing. You have something to prove. Like, for me, like, that was me when I was in the boys' home. Like, my first thing was like, I'm not gonna let no one mess with me, so I had to fight. But then now when you're in prison, it's like, I don't have to do that anymore. Like, I don't got nothing to prove to you. Like, I know how to navigate in a way where, like, there's no need for me to, show that I care, when like, I know how to, it's just one of those things where, like, now, even like with kids, where I'm trying to teach my own kids, where, like, someone trying to ask you to do something, or they want to see if you're cool or not, you can just say things like, no, I'm good, like, just simple stuff like that, So, like, in prisons, like, it's tempting to, get in trouble over dumb things like, smoke some weed or cigarettes, or, drink hooch. But it's like, I want to go home, so I'm not going to engage in that stuff. I'm not going to engage in being around people that, that can get you in trouble, because, again, this, you want to surround yourself. I'm in prison. I'm around a bunch of, obviously not the greatest people, but it's like, who do I want to be around? who do I want to surround myself with? You know, who am I going to learn something from? You know, like this guy, he seems like he's really cool. You know, he's not he's not all loud and just sticks to himself. I'm gonna go hang out with this guy. You know, I just again, I know how to be cool, but at the same time, just not be loud. You know, if that makes sense. You know.
Sure. So you've been out for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any big challenges integrating back into society after 8 years?
No, I mean, not really. I just had a lot of growth from the time that I was in prison. I mean, when I got back out, I had friends that were a part of the gang. Their first thought was like, okay, here's our OG. One of the OGs just got out, and he's gonna put this gang back on the map. You know, like, oh, I was like, no, you know, like this is all dead. You know, like there's I try to teach even to friends till this day. You know, like younger adults or kids that have a lot of pride or just want to be cool or badasses. Where now I know I'm always constantly preaching to them. We're like it's a pride thing, image thing. Like I'm teaching them to be better. I'm constantly telling them to be better. Like life is life is a lot different now than it was before, because again I grew up in poverty to where like I'm not around that anymore. So it's different. You see kids that's not in poverty trying to act like they're thugs, gangsters. Like, why do you need to act like that when you don't need to be? But again, when you're in an environment where you have to survive and be tough, like it takes me back. Again, this takes me back, because my life is completely different from what it was, and it's a blessing because of how far I've come along. But this reminds me of how bad it could have been, or how like all those times I was locked away. I needed to be there. I mean, I could have been, if I never got arrested, I could have been in jail, dead. Became a drug addict. I mean, again, a majority of my friends are no longer here. Like I have a group of 40. Like probably a fourth of them was passed away. The other fourth is became drug addicts. Like I can't even recognize them. And the other one, it's like there's only so many left. That understands. And those, again, at this point in my life, it's who is my group of friends that I want to be around. Who is it that my environment is going to shape me? So luckily, my environment, I got out of that, but most people don't get out of that. Right. They're stuck to it, because they never had that chance to.
Is there are there a number of guys from the original gang that have made it out like you have?
Oh yeah.
Do you still keep in touch? And
there's a couple of them. Yep. There's like 3 of them.
That's
very
awesome.
good. Again,
awesome.
It's one of those things. It's weird because, as a kid, they were older, so they're like, my big brother, my bad influence, and luckily for me, I was able to come home, and same thing with them. They're given a lot of time. They come out, and here I am now being a positive influence on them. Like telling them different, because at first they come out, they're ready to live this good life again. I was like, that's not how you want to carry yourself. Like it's different now. Again, a lot of it has to do with growth. Like I'm 40. Obviously, when I was like my early 30s, like I can't be walking around with name brand clothes and cool shoes. Like, how do I want to carry myself? How do I want to be? My image is different now than what it was when I was 18. Like it's how you want to, and that comes with changes. Again, growth comes with changes, and that's where I'm at today, where I preach all the time is try to be better today than I was yesterday. I'm at the point in my life where it's all about peace, because again, who wants drama? It's like it's a lot, and it doesn't mean I'm not dealing with any today, but it's like, at the end of the day now, I know if I pass away, the greatest joy is that I can go away peacefully now. Like, God knows my heart. I've had a lot of situations where I felt like, I yeah, karma happened to me, but now I'm at a place in my life where like now I hustle differently. When I say hustle differently is before I wanted a lot of money to because I never had anything. Now it's like it doesn't matter anymore in the end because it's like, I can have I done had nothing, I done had everything, and then I lost it all. I done been in prison. I was a baller in prison, but so I was like, but what is that? Your freedom is gone, right? So here I am now. It's like now I see what happens when I'm 70 or 80. Like if I had a million or 5 million, like what am I gonna do with it? Like I'm at the end of the day, it's like what can I do with it?
You're not taking it to the afterlife.
Exactly. My kids are well. I'm blessed to be in a situation where now it's like, well, how do I give back more? And that's what the biggest thing in my life is like. I want to grind and make more to give more, and that's my purpose now. Is just wanting to do better, be better, and that's this thing with the GoFundMe was just for my friends that knew me before going to prison, so they know my history, and then the friends after prison don't know my past. Nobody that I've met after I got out knew my history until I did that. Because obviously I'm not going to sit there and, brag about my history because I'm living a new life now, and that life kind of happened through pickleball. I got out and again, I love playing games, sports. I got into pickleball, and pickleball, it gave me a chance to be around people again, like, they're much older than me. A lot of pickleball players are retired. They're, good people, and you interact with them. And it's like, wow, here I am hanging out with 40, again, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, retired people, and then that made me kind of bridge the gap between, two different worlds, where I've, gained a lot of friends through the community of, sports again. And then, so now, I didn't, and Cake News took a hold of it, and so it kind of ran off after that, with it. So, yeah, and then at that moment, I was like, hey, at first I was kind of shying away from it, but then I was like, I have the opportunity now to do with more, so that's why I'm here today.
You really do have a tremendous opportunity with your story.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and how you've come out of it.
Yeah,
and it takes real courage to be open about this story.
Yeah,
I totally understand why it was hard in the first place. It takes extreme courage to come out and tell the story, and there's a lot of value to it because there's a lot of kids that are currently in your shoes.
Exactly.
So it would be great if you could continue to preach this lesson and try to get kids that are kind of going down that path to turn course.
Yeah, it's just more so of, just understanding the situation. It's just how do I get a light bulb on to one of these kids, because they, again, for me it's different because I didn't have the right people teaching me or raising me or telling me different. This is all I knew at that time. And when prison changed my life and poker changed my life, personalities, characters, meeting people, it's just having the right people to be able to show you different, to teach you. It's really, again, it's about being a good teacher, and you have to go want to learn, want to be better, to actually be better. And it's one of those things where it's like, if I can help you, I will. But I'm a firm believer. I can't help you if you don't want to be helped. And same thing with a lot of the friends that I grew up with. Like, I wish I could help you, but if I can't help you, there's nothing else I can do. Because at that point, you're just going to drag me down,
Right.
So
you've got to be willing to make that change to be helped.
That's right.
I wanted to get your opinion. It seems like lately in Wichita, there's been an uptick in violence.
Mm-hmm.
I believe over Labor Day weekend alone, there were 3 deaths.
Yes, I'm starting to see a lot of that.
And 4 additional that were critically injured.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it I saw were teens.
Yep.
I think a couple 16-year-olds shot somebody who's 20.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how would you connect with kids who are currently on that same path?
So this is why doing this is so important to me, is because storytelling, me doing this, it takes me back to that moment in time. like again, the life that I live today is nowhere near the life that I used to live, and I forget that sometimes because I'm no longer in a environment to see that, like it's not normal. Normal is like living how I'm living right now. So doing this, it gives me an opportunity to remember my purpose and why I want to do this. And obviously that's, trying to be involved back into the community and helping out the youth because I can relate to all these incidents. I know why it is that most kids want to be so quick to, pull the trigger on a gun. It's all about, just these kids, they're just, most of them are, again, looking for attention, and a lot of times it's the kids that don't have anything that needs the attention, when you're growing up in a family where you're not worried about, food or just, you have different worries, you have different thoughts, like my kids, they go to school and they're home, they're safe, they have things to do, activities to do, whereas where are these kids, what are these kids spending their time doing at the school? If you don't keep them busy, they're going to be out in the streets, and it's easy for a parent, when you're also a parent that's struggling with work or, can't afford things, you're just going to let your kid go do whatever also, So it's one of those things where it's like these kids, they just need activities to stay active, to be around, positive influences. And that's the most important thing. It's just, keeping them busy, before they make the choices that, can change their lives forever.
No, that's great advice. Other than the GoFundMe, is there anything else that listeners could potentially get involved with?
No, this is me now just trying to be more proactive now. And I'm learning to, not just be involved in the big, communities like, Youth on the Horizon or Children's Home, but more so through a lot of groups that, don't have as much either, I met a friend recently that he has a boxing gym over there by Plainview, and he teaches kids. He's also a coach. Recently they had a roof that was blown off.
I saw that.
Yeah, and so for me, it's like, hey, I'm gonna reach out to him. I obviously, same thing. He told a story. He has a story, and he wants to make a difference for kids. And for me, I'm all for it. I got with him, connected with him, and used some of the funds that I raised to write him a check also to help with the roofing. So it's just one of those things where, like, I just want to try to insert myself into where I can.
Gotcha. You got anything, Troy?
No. Remarkable.
Thank you. I mean, again, I'm just blessed. I really am. I can tell stories for days, but those stories, got me to where I'm at today. And don't get it wrong, I'm going through a lot with my own kids now. Like they're at an age where, like, I don't know if I'm going to be the best dad, best teacher, just because, again, they don't know my history either. Obviously it's something I'm not going to tell my kids until they're older, but it's one of those things where, like, they're so fortunate, like they have so much, and it's sad sometimes because I get upset that they do have a good life, that they're kind of spoiled, right? Like it makes me, like, I don't want to say, just, I get so irritated. But trust me, I have battles of my own to this day. It's a different battle. It's a different battle. It's a different battle. Like, how do I, raise my kids to be good kids? Where that's my problem now. But I'm learning to navigate through that too. But definitely, where I do have experiences with kids that really don't have what I have. So that's where moving forward is my priorities in the future, is just, doing everything I can before my life is done on this planet, because life's quick, right?
So fast.
That's what made me
realize,
a lot. I sit there and think about it, like, Earth's been here for millions years, right? Our life what, 80, 90 years, 70 years. It's quick. It's so quick that it's temporary. And for me, like, I used to always complain, you know, but then I realized, like, life to me is kind of like a game where, like, if you are given the opportunity to be in this world, you have the decision to be in this world, and what do you want to get out of this? Like, what lessons do you want to learn in this life? Like, I used to always sit there, why me, why me? But now I'm like, okay, now I get it. You know, now I know why me. And it's like, you know, I have so much more to gain from having nothing to where I'm at today, because I get to experience it all. Whereas most people, such as, say, for example, my kids, they grow up in a good community, good area, that they have no idea the struggles that a poor person would have, you know, growing up in poverty. They have a good life. But I've gained so much more from having a bad life in the early, you know, days. And it's all the experience, just, you know, now I'm so thankful all the time, you know, like, I'm thankful for the experiences I had. You know, it's still a game to me in this life where, like, okay, now, you know, how do I get as much as I can out of this life, you know? And in the end, for me, I find, you know, peace in doing what I can now to give back as much as I can. And it's just one of those things where, like, you know, I just make the best of the situation that I'm in. I mean, that's all I ever could do, you know. But you have to want it, you know.
Right.
You have to want it.
Right.
All the bad shit you went through, you've been blessed with an appreciation and a perspective
Yeah.
that you cannot have
Yeah.
unless you go through things like
Yes.
that. Like, you can't.
And it's, you know, again, it's I'm very good at rational situations where, you know, I'm always very thoughtful now. Like, I can see the worst in any situation and understand the situation. Like, you know, like, why people go through the things that they go through. I can, you know, like, I want to say a good sense of judgment on situations or problems, you know, like, you know, most people don't have any idea, you know.
Right.
But again, I'm so, the older I get, the more appreciating I am, and for the knowledge, you know, the experiences, and it's like, it brings me closer to God, because it's Him again, always constantly, you know, just forgiving, not judging. Like, He understands, but He's gonna, you know, He can't help me unless I want to be helped. Again, it's one of those situations, like, you can always change, you know, a moment in your life. You know, you can't let that moment in your life, you know, dictate your entire life. You know, like, I still got 40 more years to live. Well, let's make it a good one, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it moves fast.
It does move fast.
It's a great reminder to every day put your best foot forward and keep
It does.
moving.
And this is great. This is why I, you know, excited to do this. You know, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna come out here, we're gonna knock this out the park, because again, you know, it takes me back to a moment where, like, I can't forget, you know, it was just so much, you know. And you know, I'm just looking forward to, you know, continuing to live a good life, you know, just live right, you know. That's the biggest thing, is, you know, just being at peace at the end. It's all about being at peace.
Hell yeah, man.
You know.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability. You know, it's a sensitive topic, and I really appreciate you coming on here and telling us. I think anybody that listens to this will definitely take valuable things that they can learn. You know, as long as you wake up the next day, you can always better yourself.
That's right.
You have a priceless perspective. You really do.
Thank you.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for the time.
No, thank you guys.
I had a blast, and
Yeah, maybe we'll do a round two.
Maybe you can show us a couple of things in Texas Hold'em or pickleball or something
Yeah.
like that.
I can do that. A
Yeah.
little bit of both.
All right.
awesome. Well, thank you so
Well,
much, man.
thank you guys.
Thank you.